Serena Williams is arguably the most dominant player in tennis. After winning her first major at 17 in 1999, she has gone on to win 23 Grand Slam singles titles since. And she's not the only Williams to have a successful career in tennis. Her older sister Venus has won 7 Grand Slam titles, and together the two are undefeated in Grand Slam doubles finals. And Serena continues to dominate, most recently winning the Australian Open in 2017. Simply put, Serena slays. But what does that mean? According to Urban Dictionary, slay means to kill it, succeeded in something amazing, to kick ass, or to dominate. Slay is said to have originated in drag culture in the 1980s, along with other terms like queen and shade. This type of language was a code for the community to handle the racism, homophobia, and transphobia that they faced. And then we got to here. Beyoncé first used slay in Formation when it was released in 2016 to communicate empowerment and effortlessness and strength of people facing injustice. According to Fortune, Beyoncé has a net worth of $290 million. She supports herself, stands up for herself, and empowers others. She told Forbes in 2009, "I've never met anyone who works harder than me in my industry." So Beyoncé slays, obviously. And we already know Serena slays. But this type of athletic expression hasn't always existed in tennis. We went from here to here to here. In the 1950s and 60s, women's tennis was mostly played by housewives in country clubs. Then, in the 1970s, Billie Jean King was one of the first to challenge these stereotypes, and she dominated the courts. The famous Battle of the Sexes tennis match between King and Bobby Riggs in 1973 was a huge win for feminism and female athletics. As a fellow tennis player said of King, "She was a crusader fighting a battle for all of us. She was carrying the flag. It was all right to be a jock." King was part of the first wave of what would become a landslide. Title IX had been passed in 1972. 1977 marks the inception of the women's track and field team here at Princeton, which I run for. In 1999, the U.S. women's soccer team won the World Cup, and in the early 2000s, the Williams sisters entered the tennis arena on the world stage. Born in Compton and playing on street courts, the Williams had a lasting impact on the sport of tennis. Not only did they change the general perception of who could become a female tennis player or what a female tennis player could look like, they also changed the nature of the game. With their power serving and hitting, they forced their opponents to get stronger or lose. Now, in September of 2017, we see an array of representations of female athletes at the US Open. Different body types, different ranges of expression, different sexualities, different backgrounds, different paths to success, different ways to be powerful, different ways to slay. The evolution of female tennis players from the 1970s to now shows how the female athlete identity is dynamic. Slay is a word about unapologetic confidence in success, ability, and appearance. It is used to describe and characterize women like Serena. Slay shows how the female athlete identity is dynamic, how you can choose how to be a female athlete and kill it. So all female athletes can be strong and powerful and badass? Not quite. Let's take a look at the 2016 Olympics. An Olympic bronze medalist was referred to only as the wife of a Bears lineman by the Chicago Tribune. Fox hosted a panel tackling the topic of whether or not female athletes should wear makeup or look like washed out rags and not get sponsorships. A commentator described a judo match between women as a cat fight. But wait, we have Title IX. We've made so much progress in athletics. American female athletes slay every day. So why is this still happening? Why are we talking about cat fights and makeup? The flavor of feminism that I grew up with in the early 2000s was girl power. I was told I could do anything a boy could do, so therefore I could be whomever or whatever I wanted to be. This philosophy is the empowerment theory of feminism, whereby believing in yourself, you can get a seat at the table. Sheryl Sandberg's book, Lean In, promotes this line of thinking, where you, as a woman, can have control of your own career. Slay represents how the empowerment theory of feminism manifests itself in the current decade. Unapologetic confidence is encouraged, but there are limitations to that. In the 1970s, a commentator implied that King was more masculine than feminine. In 2014, a head of a tennis federation purposely referred to the Williams sisters as the Williams brothers. What has changed? And what hasn't changed? Slay is used to represent the evolution of the female athlete identity. But with this expansion, that means that the lines of femininity and masculinity in athletics are blurring. So the fluidity of the female athlete identity is having a direct impact on what it means to be a male athlete. And here we are at the crux of the empowerment theory of feminism. There are limitations to focusing on only one half of the population for solutions to issues that affect us all. Well, let's look at that other half of the population. Slay has helped to empower women. So what's the masculine equivalent of the word slay? Swagger. Usain Bolt has it. Your sports journalist described Olympic gold medalist sprinter Bolt as having the perfect concoction of attributes: speed, swagger, and an unavoidably excellent surname. LeBron James has it. He has led 2 different teams to NBA championships and wins the style game. But where does swagger come from? How does one get it? The earliest appearances of swagger were in Shakespeare, used to describe a form of walking. The Decline of Swagger, an anonymous essay written in 1892, uses swagger to describe boastfulness and self-assertion. In 2007, musical artist MIA released the song Paper Planes with the line, "No one on the corner has swagger like us." Inspired by that line, rappers Jay-Z, T.I., Kanye West, and Lil Wayne in 2008 released Swagger Like Us. In 2010, swagger's evolution from a popular street term to an athletics characterization was demonstrated when Madden 11 released a swagger rating for NFL player stats, sponsored by Old Spice. Swagger seems to be acquired by checking off specific characteristics: athletic skill, confidence, and cockiness. But then there's that extra coolness factor. However, swagger seems to be something You either have or you don't. Now, if this talk were totally predictable, I would go on to say that limitations for female athletes exist because of how we describe women and because it's difficult for women to exhibit swagger. The problem, you see, is how we teach women to think about themselves. But let's flip that. Let's shift the focus. How do we teach male athletes to think about themselves? Do we even have a range of definitions of masculinity in athletics? In 2007, Marla Coleman studied hyper-masculinity, an exaggerated presentation of masculinity and its connection to athletics. But that was in 2007. That was 10 years ago. Let's go back further. In 1998, Ellen Dabbs looked at the connection between being an athlete and violence against women. In 1991, sociologist Tim Curry studied locker room talk and the cultures of derogatory language and objectification of women that it perpetrates. In the 1980s, discussions started about the importance of sport in forming masculine identities. So how has masculinity changed in sports over the past 40 years? Unlike the dynamic female athlete identity, the male athlete identity is static, much more rigid, confining, unchanging, self-perpetuating. However, aspects of the static male athlete identity and hypermasculinity make sense. Strength and power will always be valued in athletics. Male athletes represent the pinnacle of physicality. They are the peak of human aspirations. They push the limits of what the human body can do. Why would we want to move away from that? So yes, strength and power have their place on the field or on the court. They are an inherent part of athletics. But the static male athlete identity exists off the playing field. Identity theory, according to Sheldon Stryker and Peter Burke, tells us that our internal identities are shaped by the roles that we play in social situations. So the roles that athletes play on the playing field directly impact the identities that they form about themselves. What are the effects of hypermasculinity and the static male athlete identity? Dominance, aggression, sexual objectification of women, lack of empathy, homophobia, emotional detachment, domestic abuse. Now we can talk about these issues in the abstract, or we can look at them closer to home, in the Ivy League, at our university. These headlines are from a year ago. The static male athlete identity exists right here on our campus. When we look at the words slay and swagger, they both have similar themes: confidence, success. However, slay represents the evolution of the female athlete identity to include many different ways to be a female athlete, ways that previously did not exist. Swagger, on the other hand, upholds traditional themes of masculinity. Confidence, resulting from assertion of power. Success, stemming from violence. Slay is about empowerment. Swagger is individualized, a separation from the lesser. Slay is a verb of expression. Swagger, a noun of possession. Slay is something you do, swagger is something you have, teaching women to express and men to possess. We should question that. We should question why we have made more progress calling women big than calling men small. We should question why we have made more progress with allowing little girls to play with trucks than allowing little boys to play with dolls. Historically, men have had more opportunities than women. That's the system we learn. That's the system that has existed for hundreds and thousands of years. So it strains our intellectual understanding of society to think that maybe, in terms of expression, women actually might have more freedom to express themselves than men. We are expanding the definitions of femininity and not doing the same for masculinity, both within the world of athletics and beyond. How an athlete competes can tell you a lot about them. Who pushes past their breaking point? Who trained that extra hour every day? Who wants it the most? How an athlete competes can tell you a lot about the society they grew up in, the social constructs that govern their behavior, how they act after a win or a loss, how they treat opponents, teammates, and officials, what they do off the field. We face a complex set of issues, but every day we can choose to do better. We can challenge locker room talk when we hear it. We can remove the expectations of hypermasculinity that we place on male athletes. We can create environments that accept a broader range of masculine expression. And we can make progress together. Thank you.